Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of the Alec Walt Show. I'm your host, Alec Walt, alongside another very special guest, and today we're talking about the National League playoffs. The one series we have decided right now in the National League is between the Braves and the Brewers. Joining me to discuss that series and more is Matt Atkins, the host of the Foul Ball Area podcast, and my good friend at MLB Network Radio. What's going on, Matt? Welcome.
Hey, Alec, thanks for having me back on the show. Honored to be here and excited to talk about some playoff baseball. It's one of the best times of year in all of sports. October baseball is just such a fun thing.
Yeah, well, leading up to October, it was an absolute roller coaster ride in the National League East for a while. It was controlled by the New York Mets. At times, it looked like the Phillies could take over. And then towards the end of the season, the Braves just took the division and they ended up taking the title. Just talk about what it was like watching the absolute roller coaster ride you called the 2021 National League East.
Oh, man. At the beginning of the season, the way the Braves were playing, I really didn't think that they were going to make it to the playoffs. I started to lose hope. And, when Ronald Acuna Jr. got injured a little less than halfway through the season, I was really worried at that point because he was like the lone bright spot of this team, the way he was playing. He was at an MVP level this season before he went down to that injury. And then after that, it was just a real struggle. And coming off the All-Star break, I don't remember how many games exactly it was, but the Braves could not put together any kind of streak, winning or losing. They would win a game and then lose a game for, I think, 16 games in a row. And so that was really frustrating because they could just never make up any ground. And then thankfully, the Mets started struggling and the Braves found a way to pick it up right around the same time and finally moved into first place. They had to fight off the Phillies there a little bit at the end, but I was never really too worried by the end of August when they played that series against the Phillies. I thought they kind of had it in the bag at that point, and they ended up sweeping Philadelphia and shut them down, really. The pitching for the Braves was phenomenal in that series. It was a really good 3 games for Atlanta, and so a big, strong finish to the season. I was really happy with it, really surprised with it, honestly, given the way this season went, losing Acuna to the injury, losing Marcell Ozuna to off-the-field issues, and, of course, he hasn't been with the team since then. I mean, those were 2 big bats in the lineup. So having to replace those guys, I think they did a great job bringing some good players in at the trade deadline, and they just had a really strong finish to the season heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, so I'm looking at your schedule right now. I see a lot of green W's towards the end of the year, so that nice hot streak definitely lifted you guys in this division. You mentioned the pitching. 2 weeks ago, I was working with Jim Memolo and Steve Sachs. I can't recall if you were the second producer on that show or not, and I told him, I was like, this matchup for the Braves against the Brewers sucks. And then I started to wait a little bit. I started to watch how you guys were trending towards the final couple weeks of the season. And, it's all about pitching. You face the Brewers. You have to go against the best top 3, arguably, in Major League Baseball. I think the Dodgers adding Scherzer add to that argument, but you know where I'm getting here. It was all based on how the Braves starting pitching was going to look. Since the 31st of August, your top 2 starters have not given up 3 or more runs. Your pitching is coming well at a great time leading into this series against the Brewers.
Yeah, the pitching has really stepped up recently, especially Max Fried, who just won September Pitcher of the Month just the other day. He's had a really good last month of the season. I mean, and pitching 2 Maddoxes in the last month where, of course, you pitch a complete game shutout under 100 pitches. That's really impressive that he's been able to do that twice in the past month. So he's had a really good finish. I mean, the pitching has just been really phenomenal to end the season, which has been huge. And that last series against Philadelphia, like I was just talking about, they really shut down Bryce Harper, who is the National League MVP candidate, probably the front runner for the MVP, depending on who you talk to. They really shut him down. I think he was hitless in that series. So that was huge. I mean, they've just been really, really good recently. It's been really fun to watch. It's been really good to see that, and really encouraging heading into the postseason, where pitching is such a big deal. Obviously, that's what wins a lot of postseason series, is the pitching. And I think that the starting pitching now is really solid. The bullpen is where there might still be some questions for the Braves going forward, but you can feel really, really good about the starting pitchers that they're going to be able to throw out there against the Brewers this weekend.
Well, before we get into your bullpen, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I believe this was reported by one of our good friends who's a frequent guest, the Braves will start Charlie Morton in Game 1 of the National League Division Series against the Brewers. He'll be facing Corbin Burns, who's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. Do you agree with the decision to start Morton over Fried in Game 1?
It's a tough one because, you look at the way that, like I was just talking about Max Fried, the way he's been pitching to end the season, and he's the best starter in that Braves rotation right now. But then you look at Charlie Morton and what he's been able to do in his career in the playoffs, and that's why the Braves brought him to Atlanta this year, is for the postseason experience. And so it's hard to argue either way. I think that you can't go wrong. I would have started Max Fried in this game on Friday, but Charlie Morton and his postseason experience that he has playing with the Astros, playing with the Rays, I mean, he is a fantastic veteran pitcher. So putting him on the mound to start this series, I like that move as well. So you really can't go wrong with either of them.
So you got to look at your options outside of Charlie Morton and the rest of your starting rotation because, relying on your starting pitching to throw 9 complete innings every night is not exactly realistic. We know Will Smith is a veteran reliever. We've also seen him give up the bases loaded and still get out of the inning. So he's had some high stress games, but, looking at some of your options outside of your starting pitching, who are some of your reliable bullpen options, the guys you're going to need to help carry this team through a potential postseason run?
Well, Will Smith, like you mentioned, I mean, he's had some issues this season. And if you follow Braves Twitter at all, I mean, there's a very, very vocal fans on Twitter, just like any major league team has. But Braves Twitter, I think, is a little bit of a different breed, and they get after the players that don't perform well. So Will Smith has definitely faced a lot of scorn from fans on Twitter this year, and he's struggled at times. So I don't feel too confident about him. But Luke Jackson has had a very good season this year, and he's had struggles in the past. He's had times where he's been thrust into that closer role for the Braves, and he hasn't done so well. And then a lot of fans get upset with him, think that he needs to go. But he's had a really solid season coming out of the bullpen this year. He's been putting together a good year for the Braves, and he's been pretty reliable. So I look at him as an option for the Braves this postseason to pick up a lot of innings and really be a reliable guy on the mound.
So you look at your defense, obviously pitching, defense. You look at your infield is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
Offensively, defensively, I think one guy that deserves a little more credit. Obviously, when you look at Major League Baseball, no one really gives loves to some of the assistant coaches. But what Ron Washington has done with this infield, specifically on the defensive side, is absolutely spectacular. It must be amazing being able to watch this whole team, but specifically this infield, take the field every day for the Braves.
Yeah, this infield, I mean, you look at it from an offensive perspective, and they're arguably the best infield in Major League Baseball, maybe ever, because the way they're putting together offensive numbers. But the defense has been really, really good as well. And Ron Washington, like you said, I mean, he's been to the World Series twice as a manager. So to have him as an assistant coach for the Braves, I love him. I love having him on the coaching staff. And every year I'm worried that he's going to be poached by one of those teams with an open manager position. Every year he stays in Atlanta for some reason. Maybe he just likes it there. I don't know. But I'm really happy that he's still there. And I think that this infield is really fun to watch. Ozzie Albies has just blossomed into one of the best second basemen in the league. Dansby Swanson, who, he's had a lot of pressure on him and a lot of expectations early on in his career, and he hasn't always put it together, but this year he's had a really solid year, and his defense has always been fantastic. And you got Austin Riley and Freddie Freeman holding it down at the corners, both really, really talented guys. So this infield defensively is a very good, very solid infield, and I'm happy to have them.
If I were to tell you at the end of the 2021 regular season that Austin Riley would be your Triple Crown winner, what would your reaction be?
I would be very surprised. I would not have believed
it.
But man, he had a really solid season. I was really excited to watch him this year. And, I've had high hopes for him for the past couple of years, because when he came up as a rookie, I think he was hitting home runs like every other game, and he was really fun to watch. So to see him be really consistent throughout this whole season, man, it was fun. And I think he might get some MVP votes this year.
I agree with you. I feel like when you look at that MVP situation, obviously when people mention the Braves, they love to talk about Freddie Freeman. Obviously, when you talk about the National League MVP race for Fernando Tatis Jr., but, it's pretty crazy that even though he's had such a dominant season, I still feel like nationally not as many people know or respect what he did this year in Atlanta.
Such a great season. I mean, I think he was hitting over 300. I don't know how many home runs he finished with, but it was a career high for him there. Just a really fantastic season from Riley all around. And there were times where, looking at his stats, I think he was hitting home runs a couple of times a week, like every other game. He had a couple of times where I thought he should have won Player of the Week or Player of the Month. I think he did end up with Player of the Week once or twice. I don't know if he ever won Player of the Month, but he really stepped up and had a fantastic season. I think he was like the first Braves player under 24, or first Braves third baseman 24 or younger to have a 100 RBI season since Chipper Jones. So when you put that in perspective, I mean, that's really what the Braves have been looking for since Chipper Jones retired, is a solid third baseman. And Austin Riley is that guy now, because they've had a couple of guys rotating in there. I mean, Josh Donaldson had that great year at third base for the Braves. They've had a couple of other guys, in that position, but no one really stuck. Now Austin Riley has really secured his spot at third base for the Braves for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, when you have your name mentioned with the names of Chipper Jones, I think you're doing a pretty good job. So it was a spectacular season this year for Austin Riley. Now, obviously, I mentioned he won the Triple Crown technically for your guys' team. Obviously, if Adam Duvall played the entire season with the Braves, I'd give him the credit. He only had 45 of his 113 RBIs with the Atlanta Braves. But can we just lock this guy in for the rest of his career? Because it seems like anytime he walks into this clubhouse with your team, he's just a complete different player. He's been absolutely spectacular. Anthopoulos, just make sure this guy never leaves Atlanta. He's been unbelievable.
Yeah, I really like Adam Duvall. He is such a great player, such a great power hitter, a great guy to have in the lineup. I was sad when he started the season with Miami this year, and then somehow they ended up bringing him back at the deadline. So I was happy about that because, I mean, he's just been really good in his multiple stints with the Braves. He's been a huge piece of that lineup. So when they were able to bring him back, trade for him in late July, I was really happy that they got him back into the lineup. He has had a great season. I mean, he's a big power hitter, and I was listening to MLB Network Radio one day, and Jim Memolo was on talking about Adam Duvall. This was back in June when he was still with the Marlins. I think he hit 3 home runs in a game. That's what he does. I mean, he finishes the season with a lot of home runs, but a lot of times they come in 1 or 2 games. I remember last year with the Braves, he had a couple of 3 home run games in the same week. So 6 home runs in 1 week. That's pretty impressive. But he doesn't just do that. He does stay consistent and hit home runs all season long, drive in RBIs all season long. So he's a very, very good player. Glad to have him back in the lineup for the Braves. I hope they'll keep him around a little bit longer this time.
So we look at other options here in the Braves outfield. You also acquired Eddie Rosario, Jorge Soler. If you guys make it to the World Series, he'll definitely be your DH. Jock Peterson. You got a lot of options here in the outfield. You also have the ability to move some pieces around depth-wise, depending on your lineup situation. But if you were the manager of the Atlanta Braves today, how would you position this outfield for this series against the Brewers?
It's a tough one. I think you got to have Soler and Peterson in there.
Duvall in center?
I put maybe Duvall in left.
Okay, you're taking a hit defensively with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, there are a lot of pieces there, and there are a lot of ways that you can arrange them. Like you said, Soler's got to be the DH if you make it to the World Series and you're playing at the American League team. But you got to have him in the lineup. So when you're still playing in the National League, you got to have him in the lineup, and so you have him somewhere in the outfield. But Peterson, maybe I would put Duvall in center. Peterson in right, Soler in left. I don't know. It's tough. There's so many options, so many ways you could do it.
These are tough questions that, Snicker's going to need to answer.
Exactly,
I mean, that was the one thing that I was worried about at the deadline is you guys added great bats, but you did take the hit defensively. But look at your bench. Like, if you guys are, say, down by 1 or 2 runs, I would love to see someone like Rosario or Peterson come in off the bench in a pinch hitting role. Specifically Peterson, who's been here before. I mean, even though the defense isn't amazing and, you may even have to start some other pieces you may not want to in certain situations, but, the bats are real. The defense does concern me, but I wouldn't be surprised if you guys had a couple different, you kind of spotted it based on who's pitching that day, but it's almost like a good problem to have, but the defense does concern me in the outfield for the Braves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a point of concern for the Braves in the postseason. But so that's a good point. Keeping Peterson on the bench, bring him in as a pinch hitter in a pinch hitting scenario, put one of the better defensive players in the outfield to start the game. That's not a bad idea. I like that, actually.
So at least when you guys play a team like the Brewers, they're not the most exciting offensive team in the league. That is their one weakness. Yes, Christian Yelich and other players in their lineup are simply amazing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here with the Braves in this series defensively, but it's looking like you guys have a very solid lineup, a very solid rotation, and should give the Brewers a hell of a series here in the DS. So just let's talk about Corbin Burns. We've made it very clear that if it's a higher scoring game, the Braves are going to win. If it's a lower scoring game, that may give the advantage to the Milwaukee Brewers. Just talk about how this lineup should attack one of the best pitchers in baseball. Much easier said than done, but you guys got some depth and some options that can give this guy a lot of trouble.
Yeah, they definitely do. And Corbin Burns he's had a fantastic season. And what did he start the season with? A crazy ratio of strikeouts to walks, and
yeah, he will basically lock the Cy Young in the first 2 months.
Yeah,
I don't know about now, but he did in the first 2 months.
A fantastic season from Corbin Burns, like you said, one of the best pitchers in the league, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough matchup, but I think that this Braves offense is a powerful offense, and that's their strength. So they've just got to come out swinging and try to score as many runs as they can against him. I think that that is how they win games. They hit the long ball, they hit the home runs, they drive in a lot of runs in bunches. So I think that's just what they have to try to do. They have to stick to what they do, which is hitting for power. And that's benefited them to this point. It's gotten them to where they are in the postseason against the Brewers. So I think that that's just what they've got to stick with.
All right. What is your prediction for the National League Division Series between the Brewers and the Braves?
It's a tough one. Honestly, going into this series, just looking at it on the surface and looking at the season the Brewers have had, I wanted to just say, the Brewers are going to win this series. But you look into it a little deeper, they split the season series playing against each other. The Braves' starting pitching has been fantastic to end the season. Like we said, the lineup is insanely powerful. And the Brewers losing Devin Williams is a huge blow to their bullpen. And I think that is going to be a big point in this series. And I think the Braves are going to end up winning the NLDS. I think it's going to go 5 games, but the Braves are going to end up winning it.
I, for a while, had the Brewers as the team representing the National League in the World Series. I don't love their lineup, like I've already mentioned, but this Devin Williams news, knowing how well your starting pitching has performed, is absolutely crushing. Yeah. I'm obviously have changed who I think is going to go to the World Series, but Matt, it took me until probably Wednesday to change my mind, but I'm actually with you on this series. I've been saying forever, Brewers, but I don't know if I could pick them right now. I don't think I can. Obviously, if they had the ability to go Burns for 7 innings, Woodruff or so for 7 innings with those two in the back of the bullpen, the Braves aren't going to score more than a couple runs. But when you get deeper into that bullpen and you have the options of guys like Peterson and Rosario and other big bats in this lineup to come and do something, I think this Braves hot streak is going to carry them in this series. Now, the couple days off definitely can change some momentum things, but it's going to be a hell of a series, Matt. Before we let you walk, how can our listeners here keep in touch with you on social media and listen to your podcast?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Matkins21. You can follow the podcast at Foul Ball Area. We put out new episodes once a week talking about all things baseball. We got a playoff preview this week up, so make sure to check that out. It's at foulballarea.com or on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Wherever you find your podcast, you can find us.
Cool. Matt, thank you very much, man, for taking the time out of your day to join me here on the Alec Walt Show.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a great week of playoffs.
All right, man. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of the Alec Walt Show. I'm Alec Walt alongside Matt Atkins. Who do you believe advances in the series between the Brewers and the Braves? Feel free to comment that below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Down the Block Sports for more of my exclusive content. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you very soon.